This is Christian Gomez with the New American Magazine, and today's top headline is entitled, "Exposed, Fake News Ignores Video of Drunk Naked Bernie Sanders Singing with Soviet Comrades." Today with us, we have the author of this article, William F. Jasper. We're glad to have you on the program today, Bill.
Thank you, Christian. Pleasure being here.
So it sounds like Bernie got his groove back in the USSR in 1988. Tell us about this and why the media is not talking about this, yet they love to talk about supposed Russian collusion when it comes to President Trump.
For more than 2 years now, CNN, ABC, CBS, ABC, the whole fake news media complex have been obsessed with Russia collusion. I mean, the media folks that for decades have looked the other way at all kinds of communist collusion here in the United States and communist conspiracy have been obsessed with President Trump. And they have based this upon largely, as you recall undoubtedly, the supposed Steele document, which was really the only collusion that we have had so far with Russia, because presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid to have this dossier put together in Russia with Russian informants and presumably with the Russian intelligence service. So one would think that perhaps they might be just a wee bit interested in a video which surfaced recently of another presidential candidate, currently still a presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont. And the video which surfaced apparently was put out or found and released by activists with Beto O'Rourke's presidential campaign, who see Bernie as a competitor. And so this video came out. We've embedded it in our article. It's a video of Bernie Sanders and his then new wife, Jane, on their honeymoon in the Soviet Union in 1988. This should be of interest. The most prurient thing that came out in our and was reflected in our title was that it appeared that Bernie and others with his contingent there in Russia were drunk and naked, or at least partially naked, in Russia, singing songs and touring around the Soviet Union. And as we explain in the video, in the article, it's unclear from the video whether he and the others are naked or whether they are wearing briefs, underwear, swim trunks, gym shorts, whatever. But they are in a state of semi-undress. Perhaps they were at a beach or in a hot tub or playing strip poker or getting ready for an orgy. We don't know. I did reach out to Senator Sanders' office. I did have some questions for him about his 1988 honeymoon in the Soviet Union. They have not responded as yet. But there are quite a few very important questions that come to mind here. This was 1988. This is 1988, remember.
The Cold War is still going on. The Berlin Wall is still standing. Reagan is in the White House. The Gorbachev is in the Kremlin at the time.
And they are still operating the Gulag Archipelago with untold hundreds of thousands or millions still imprisoned there in these slave labor death camps. They are still occupying Afghanistan. They're still supporting terror all over the world. And Bernie Sanders is there in Yaroslavl. And the excuse given by the apologists in the pro-Sanders media is that, well, he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont, and he was just over there on official business. He was there for their sister city celebration. Well, what they don't mention in any of these apologetics for Bernie Sanders is that he was then the mayor of Burlington, Vermont, and he and his comrades on the city council, who were close buddies with the Sandinistas in Nicaragua and with Fidel Castro, they had put together this sister city program with the Soviet Union specifically to promote this peace propaganda that Gorbachev and the Soviet KGB were putting on all around the world. And so this is really an example of the double standard which we see, which is so screamingly obvious in the media, and which it comes as no surprise to those of us who've been witnessing it for decades. But the real story here is why hasn't the media, not just why didn't they initially, but why have they still now? They've had over a week to view this video, to ask Senator Sanders about more details, not only about this, but about his visits also to Fidel Castro's communist paradise in Cuba, to the communist paradise in Nicaragua, where he met with Daniel Ortega and developed very close friendships with them. We also have a link to a video there for his interview after he came back from Nicaragua. I was in Nicaragua after the Sandinistas were replaced, right at the time when they were replaced by Violeta Chamorro, and I saw a completely different side of Nicaragua than Bernie Sanders talks about. He speaks of it glowingly about all the wonderful things that the Sandinistas accomplished. I saw the people who had been in the prisons there, the people who were slave labor. I saw the poverty that the Sandinistas had inflicted on their nation. But Bernie Sanders has not been forced to account for any of these major discrepancies. So there's a lot here that isn't being said.
Could you imagine if the media had uncovered a video of Donald Trump in a similar position in Russia with his shirt off, drinking vodka with Putin and other various Russian government officials? That would probably be all over the media. But this clip, we're seeing it seldomly sprinkled, barely not even covered at all in any of the major media coverage of the election.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and not even... we know that would be the case if it were President Trump, but even if it were any other conservative Republican legislator or person of note, you know that it would be a huge issue. They'd be talking and screaming Russia collusion. But you know, this was happening at a time when it was standard practice, as it still is today under Putin, for the KGB to compromise foreign visitors with sex or drugs, alcohol, bribes. And so we've seen with President Trump that we have people like Maxine Waters and Bernie Sanders and others who have been to all these communist countries and have been compromised over and over again. They're the ones accusing him. We still have not seen anything from the Mueller probe that shows anything regarding Russian collusion with the Trump administration. The CNN and the anti-Trump media will constantly parade that, say, look, he's had umpteen Russians indicted. They've indicted 13 Russians. That's a throwaway. They know these are Russians that are never going to come over here, never stand trial, will never be brought over here. And all of the other indictments are for things unrelated. These are so-called process crimes. And so, yes, we have a terrible fake news media double standard here. Another very recent thing which plays into this, Dianne Feinstein. She has been the leader in the Senate in pushing for this investigation and accusing Trump of collusion. What happened last year with the revelation that Russell Lowe, a Chinese man on her staff for over 20 years, was a long time, during that whole time, an agent for Communist China? What happened there? The FBI just let him go, and he went over to China, and he's doing propaganda for them now. So this was very important because Dianne Feinstein was what? She was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Not only that, she is a member of the Gang of Eight, and as such, the Gang of Eight are those 8 members of the House and Senate, Republican and Democrat, who have access to top secret information. She had a man on her staff who was a communist Chinese agent for decades, and no media outrage over this, no demand for investigation, no demand for bringing her up and have her investigated, have her
That's right.
interrogated.
We probably won't be seeing the FBI raid her home or Bernie Sanders' home or even the home of President Obama over his hot mic incidents with Russian President Medvedev in South Korea back in 2012.